Yesterday the Series is the worst show I have ever watched. Now, I don't say that lightly because I like to give, of course, the creators of the show and the actors a bit of, leeway because maybe I just don't understand it the way other people do. But I am convinced that this show is the worst. And we're gonna talk about it in this lovely rant video. Okay, so I've been debating covering this show for the past couple episodes that have come out, but it hasn't matched the theme of my channel. It's not related to, toy media or Project Sekai. But when this episode came out, I thought that I had to talk about it. And first of all, I want to get my credentials out of the way. No, I am not a therapist. No, I am not a screen director, writer, actor, any of that. But I am someone who has gone through an abusive relationship in the past, and some of the things that happen to these two main characters, Kelvin and Veer, are very similar to what I have gone through. And as someone that is going through the process of working through PTSD, I think I have at least a bit of authority in talking about this. Now, I do just want to give a quick content warning if you are not aware of what is happening in the show. This video is going to go over assault and the unconsensual intercourse, I don't want to get flagged by YouTube, along with kidnapping, stalking, and SH. If you do not know what SH stands for, once again, it is because of YouTube's guidelines, but you can Google it, and I'm pretty sure that you can figure out what it means. Now, if you do not know what Yesterday the Series is, it is a 2026 Thai BL show starring Fort Pete, and it came out a little over a month ago. Now, this show started as a sort of dramatic will they, won't they, before devolving into us seeing Kelvin, which is played by Pete, kidnapping our character Veer and keeping him in his basement. Now, for the longest time, I gave this show, a bit of leeway because it wasn't trying to sort of glamorize their relationship. It wasn't trying to make us feel that they should be together. There was a scene in one of the episodes where Kelvin does try to assault Veer. Now, Veer is tied to the chair. I will not be showing any photos from this scene because, once again, it's really shady on YouTube. If you want a full overview of everything that has happened in this show, I do recommend watching another video because I do not want to go all over all of the events in this show, and I do not recommend watching it because of what I'm about to talk about, but if you want to, it is on WeTV exclusively. So all of what I'm talking about does start at the assault scene. Now, if you do not know what scene I am talking about, just imagine that Veer is sort of been tied up and then Kelvin comes and tries to get it on with him. That is about all you need to know. Now, up to this point, we have been seeing, of course, he stalked Veer and he's keeping Veer imprisoned in the basement of his house, and this is all really bad, and we know this. But the first sort of romance-themed assault happens at this point. And when I first saw this, everyone in the comments that I saw, everybody's, thoughts and opinions was all, oh my goodness, how could Kelvin do this? Poor Veer. And so I thought, okay, maybe we're going to see a better plot line. This is the same company that made Love in the Air. And if you do not remember Love in the Air was a very true telling of what I would call a assault, because I cannot say the other word, scene starring Fort Pete. And personally, I saw that scene and saw how they portrayed the character Sky, and I thought it was done beautifully. So when I saw this Kelvin and Veer situation, I thought maybe they would go about it in a good way as they did in Love in the Air. But of course, I was wrong, and that leads us to episode 8 and 9, where we have left off now. Now, I'm about to get into a real rant where maybe all of my ideas aren't quite as connected and seen through as a sort of proper thought-out YouTube video would be, but this is more about just getting my opinions out there because I am mad. So let's get into this awful episode. So we start the episode off with Kelvin on the floor, sort of, reliving and rethinking about everything that he's done, especially whereas he believes that Veer is either dead or severely hurt, and that everyone is sort of blaming him. And then we see Veer come in and stop him from I don't know, something with a lighter, maybe lighting the room on fire. It's somewhat unsure, like it's not confirmed. But I do want to preface this. Do not blame Veer. I have been in Veer's position. Veer, no matter what Kelvin does, no matter what happens, he still loves Kelvin. And so the fact that he comes back to sort of save Kelvin and to check on him doesn't surprise me as much as I saw it surprise some other people. I don't blame him. What I do blame him for is later on. Once again, do not blame Veer. Everything is still so new to him, and everything that's happening, he's very much in that sort of Stockholm Syndrome phase, in my opinion, of course. Once again, I'm not a therapist, but in my opinion, he is still working through all of this, so this is not his fault. In this scene, we also see Kelvin admit that he was using Veer and that he did not really, struggle from all of the nightmares and all of the PTSD that he said he did. In this scene, we also see Veer sort of accept this, and he decides to break all contact with Kelvin, which is a great thing, and it is also a really hard feat to do when you are in Veer's position. So I do applaud him, even though he's not a real person. I do applaud him for doing this because it is really hard, and it taking him this long to break contact with Kelvin also does not surprise me. After this, we see Veer sort of gain back his own sense of personality, his own sense of being. He takes over the company. He starts, doing normal life things. And at this point, I was thinking, okay, this is good. Maybe, despite the fact that it is a Fort Pete series, maybe we are going to be focusing, more on, the death of Lalit and everything else in the show. But no, this sort of happy part of the show was very short-lived. So there is a big business proposition thing going on that isn't really important to what we're talking about, but Kelvin does say something that makes Veer fall for him all over again, and they end up deciding to work together on this project as partners, like they did at the beginning of the series. Now Kelvin says, hey, don't worry, I'm going to stay away from you, this is strictly just business. To which Veer says, don't worry, let bygones be bygones, and let's start over again. Now, I have to applaud Kelvin slightly for this because of all the things he could do, this is the right thing. Stay away from Veer. He is still working through this. He is still overcoming this. You can't be in his life. And although I absolutely hate how this scene was written, and I think it is absolutely awful that they wrote it this way, we have to remember these are not real people. And so this scene, the person Veer doesn't exist. If Veer was a real person, I wouldn't be that mad because I would have done the same thing. I went back to my toxic, abusive ex too, multiple times, and I understand that. But this is a show, and this show is trying to glamorize this, and that is what really pisses me off. So, after this scene, as if it could not get worse, we see Kelvin sort of still dealing with, the guilt and remorse of what he did to Veer, as he should. And we see him take this out on himself by doing SH. Once again, my abusive partner did the exact same thing, so I feel like I have at least a little bit of authority over talking about this. Now, I can kind of understand this if it was framed in a different way, but it was framed for you to want to feel bad for Kelvin. The music, the setup of the scene, and all of the comments I saw on WeTV were all like, oh, poor Kelvin, oh my goodness, this is so sad. And I think that is where this show really starts to fall apart in my mind. We should not be feeling bad for Kelvin. Yes, Kelvin should be feeling, upset and sad and guilty about what he did, but we should not be feeling bad for Kelvin. Kelvin literally kidnapped this man, he stalked them, he almost killed Lalit, and he assaulted this person. Of course he needs to feel guilt about this. We should not feel bad for him. There is nothing in his past that should make us feel bad for him. Murderers had awful childhoods, and we still don't feel bad for them. This is the same thing. No matter what happened in his past, it does not make up for what he ends up doing as an adult later on. Now, we'll go over a bit more how I feel about this later, but let's just get through the rest of this episode. So after that, there is a business meeting in which Kelvin does not show up, and Veer asks, of course, where's Kelvin? To which Lalin, which is a common friend of both of them, says pretty much, oh, you should either know or you should ask him yourself. pretty much like looking down upon Veer for this. And also, even though she knows everything that has happened, she also seems to somewhat be taking Kelvin's side and that this is Veer's fault somehow, which I also think is awful because it is just reinstating to Veer that he did something wrong, even though he has done nothing wrong or nothing that deserves this, at least. And so after Kelvin shows up for a hot minute and then storms out of the room all dramatic, Veer decides to follow him and ask, "Hey, are you okay?" And then he sees his wrist, to which Kelvin is like, "Oh, no, I'm okay, see," and fakes a smile. Now, this already is so toxic because this is just him falling into Kelvin's trap again and falling in love with him and thinking that he did something wrong when he did not. But to make it worse, let's look at a couple comments over the top of this. Okay, so this comment says, "Bro, leave Kelvin alone." And I've seen a couple different comments like this throughout the episode, and I've been playing them across my screen throughout this rant and ramble. Now, it's kind of funny that everybody has done a complete 180 and is now blaming Veer for everything, when Veer has done nothing wrong, at least in this sense, to sort of deem any of this like necessary. Like, why are we turning on him? Not only did he do nothing wrong, but the fact that he, doesn't push Kelvin further on his SH, is not surprising, because if Kelvin doesn't want to talk about it, Veer doesn't need to push him on it. We don't need to make Veer sound like the bad guy. So that is pretty much where the episode ends off. There is some sort of like advance thing. If you wanted to pay, you could watch the next episode, but I am not putting money towards this. If the show does get worse and somehow I will cover, future episodes, but I think this is all I want to talk about for it. But we're going to go over a couple of things about why the comments are awful and just messed up, and how this bad representation can sort of backfire. So let's look into that. So not to sort of like point out Fort Hikey Pete's comment, but they are one person that I follow and that I usually agree with things on because we both share a love of Fort and Pete. But I think it does sort of point out something that I want to talk about, and that is that this is being glamorized not only in the show but outside of the show because it is played by Fort Pete. Because we have seen these actors be green flags before, because we know they are good people, I feel like most of the people watching this are like, you know what, it's okay, it's Fort Pete, like this isn't that bad, or like they're actually kind of cute, or like, when Kelvin did this, it was really cute. And I think that is just awful. I think that we need to understand that even though this is a Fort Pete show, and I too love Fort Pete, this show itself is awful and we need to drag it through the mud. We can separate Fort Pete from this show, and we need to. Yes, their acting is absolutely amazing, and I think Pete did an amazing job on this character. Almost too good. We should still not be supporting this show. Now, the show itself is one thing. If you were to watch this show without seeing any comments or anyone else's opinions on it, it might not be as bad, but between the comments of people, sort of villainizing Veer and, making Kelvin sound better, and what happens in the show, it can lead to some really problematic thinking for people that have been through stuff like Veer and like myself. And so I do just want to quickly touch on that. Now, one thing that I did coming out of my abusive relationship, and I know that other people probably have done also, is not blaming your abuser. And I feel like this is something that this show is also going to sort of lead people down the wrong path. If you watch this show, or if someone watches this show after being in an abusive relationship or having something happen to them like in this show, their mindset watching this is going to be, okay, so what they did isn't that bad, or they are still a good person, or I should check up on them because maybe they are SHing like Kelvin did as well. Now, I can only speak for myself, of course, and I know if I watched this show, a couple months ago even, before I really started my therapy and PTSD sort of process of working through that, I know that I would have seen these comments and I would have felt bad for my abuser, because I would have thought, what I did affected them and that they might be a harm to themselves, or that maybe they are struggling and I should go help them, even though you should stay as far away from them as possible. This show is going to, make you feel like you did something wrong and you now need to go and help your abuser. It could also make you think that your abuser isn't as bad as you thought they were or as they were showing you, and that maybe they'll change. And I'm sure in this show, Kelvin is going to do a 180 and he will be a perfect man and they will live happily ever after, because that seems to be the way the show is going. And I want to stress that in real life, people are not like this. If someone abused you, there is a very high chance they're not going to change. I know this. I went back to the same person again and again and again, and they never changed. But if you watch this show and you're still in a vulnerable mindset, you might think, oh my goodness, I just need to, be there for them and I need to help them and we can overcome this together. When really you need to protect yourself and your own feelings and stay far away from them, unlike what Kelvin and Veer are doing. So having side characters like Lalin and a couple others sort of be on Kelvin's side and, not helping Veer, even though he is in so much danger sometimes, and even though they have to know this is a bad, situation for him, it also does not help, because if you are watching this and you're in a similar situation, you think that if you speak out or if you tell someone about what you are going through, you may get a response like Lalin gave, and it might just shut down all of your feelings and make you not want to reach out to anyone again. It might just make you feel guilty all over again. And I think that is awful. I don't want to hate on the character Lalin. Maybe she just, I don't know, give her the benefit of the doubt for something. But her and also the psychiatrist, therapist, brother, whatever his name is, I forget, it's not important. Both of those characters I feel like are just, once again, awful representation and are kind of leading you to believe that people like Kelvin are okay and that you should continue to be friends with them and promote their relationships that are clearly toxic. Now, as I wrap this rant up, I do just want to give a couple comments. One, this series is not done. I think this series has 10 or 12 episodes, and so everything could change. We could see something completely different. But honestly, even if, no matter what they do, I still think this series is awful and we should be dragging it through the mud. There is nothing you can do from here out that won't change what has happened in episode 8 and everything before. I do also want to point out that if you are going through anything like this, anything similar to what Veer and myself have been through, that you are not alone, and that this episode and this show entirely are absolutely nothing like real life. Your abuser isn't going to change, and everybody isn't going to be on your abuser's side. Reach out to someone, it will be okay, and avoid this show at all costs. If you, like me, for some reason have watched up to this episode, stop it right now. This is just not good for your mental health. It's not good for anything. I do not recommend watching this unless you are some strange freak or just, I don't know, a therapist that wants to look at an example. And that is why I think Yesterday the series is the worst show to ever exist. Now, if you want some better recommendations, you can join me over in watching Duong with You. See Your Love is another good one. That is about a deaf character falling in love. If you want good representation of, PTSD and moving on, Love in the Air is also a great show for that. Has the same actors if that's what you're looking for. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day. I don't know, maybe I'll make more videos like this. Maybe I'll make more videos on Thai BL, who knows. But for now, thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.